Hey guys, VoidRaven5829 here with part 2 of my list building series, HQs and troops. Alright, so diving in, well actually I guess I should review last time. Last time, for those who are jumping right in the middle of this, last time we went over list type and list theme. You can check that out in the playlist under List Building 101 under my name. Alrighty, so back to HQs. The way I view it, you have one of two options: support or combat. And the way you tell the difference is, does the unit that the HQ is with support the HQ, or does the HQ support the unit? And this is very significant because it's two different roles completely. Support HQs usually have 2 or fewer wounds, limited warrior selection in regards to compared to the normal combat HQ. So they might have access to jump packs or bikes or something like that, like the Chaos Dark Apostle or Warpsmith. Support HQs are usually healers or psychers. So you have Pain Boys and Weird Boys and big mechs for orcs. You have sorcerers, dark apostles, and warpsmiths for chaos, and you have librarians and chaplet for marines, essentially. That sort of thing. And they, like I said, they support their unit. They either boost defense in form of feel no pain or certain biomancy powers, or they increase the damage output of their unit by giving them an extra shot, adding damage, adding attacks, etc., etc., or reducing cover saves of opponents. That's another good way to boost damage as well. And a lot of that is done through psychic powers and all that fun stuff. So on to combat HQs, these are the guys that are the beat sticks. These are the ones that you spare no expense on. The guy he gets a 2+ armor save, 3+ invul save as much as possible. Both hands are close combat weapons instead of a gun. He just absolute balls out raw power. And his supporting unit, is what I call an honor guard, and these are just guys that they try to replicate what the HQ is doing. So, like for a wolf-mounted wolf lord in Codex Space Wolves, his honor guard of choice are thunder wolves, or Thundercav, or other beast unit, like the Fenrisian wolves. That's what I'm looking for, because they serve similar roles. They're both close combat oriented. They both move at the same speed and have the same essential abilities. Combat HQs usually run you anywhere between 150 to 200. Some even go up to 250 if they're named characters. And support HQs run anywhere between 50 to 125, depending on how many mastery level points they have for psychers. But at least if you're orcs, you can even go lower down than that and go with mech boys that are 15 points apiece. But that's a whole different can of worms right there. So when you're choosing your HQ, you need to decide if your army is going to be more in your face and take a combat HQ, or if it's going to be more of a support role where you just need to buff certain things at certain points in the game in order to get benefits to swing the game in your favor. Alright. I prefer combat HQs as my warlord, simply because they generally have 3 wounds, 3 or more wounds. I think in the case of chapter masters and Tyranid Hive tyrants, those guys usually have 3 plus wounds, and that's a pretty beefy guy to take on, even if they don't have 2 plus armor saves, because of that extra wound, and because of their nature of not going around solo, generally. Alright, so on to troops. You either have, this is another binary option, because that's just how I roll. You either have your horde, your elite, or your average. Horde are the guys that are 5 or 6 plus armor saves and can be taken in squads of, at least 15 or at least 20. They're fairly cheap, usually below, I'd say below 8 points to start each, or maybe 9. Yeah, somewhere between, underneath 10 points is really the starting, is really how you can tell if they're a horde unit or not. And horde units are used to either very cheaply grab objectives, because they usually come in stock as cheaper than your normal, your average troops. And hordes also provide a very specific role in the tar pit, which I'll get into later in a tactical video. But tar pitting can be a very, very essential part of your army's attack style, depending on who you're playing. Alright, then there's your elites. These are the guys that cost anywhere between 17 and upwards in points per guy, stock. So these are Deathwatch veterans, let's see, Grey Knight Paladins, and other guys like that. These are the ones that they usually have a lot more attack, offensive output, and defensive abilities that keep them on the board longer. However, they tend to not spread out as well, because you don't have near as many as you would in with an average unit or a horde unit, as you could probably guess. The special part about elites is that they're usually, since they have such a small footprint, they can hide very well and outflank, or outflank around your enemy to catch them off guard, or they can hide behind a ruin and be completely forgotten about, and run out and grab an objective in the last turn. As well as being pretty decent at close combat usually, or range combat, depending on which army you are. But they tend to almost be very good at distracting and pulling units away from the bulk of your army onto themselves, because they present a threat because of their damage output. These could also be Tau crisis suits, because they have a very specific role. It's very well engineered in the game mechanics to help them out with that. And then in your average troop, these are your Space Marines. These guys are 3 plus, 4 plus armor save. They cost anywhere between 10 and 19 points, or 10 and 16 points on average. So these are your tactical Marines, these are your scout Marines, your heavy armored boys, knobs if you can take them ever as troops, which you can't anymore, and your Tyranid warriors. I would consider those as elites, because they cost 30 points apiece. Anyway, your average troops, these are your bread and butter. These are the guys that they can usually take any kind of special weapons you need them to take, but it's limited in numbers to like 1 or 2 special weapons per unit, or otherwise they're the middle of the road between the two. They have decent size numbers as a unit size, but they're not all powerful like elites are, to the point where each individual guy has a completely unique loadout, or the possibility to have that. And the usage out of average troops is that they can plug in anywhere. Tactical Marines, you can give them any kind of transport, any kind of special and heavy weapon, and you can plug them in to fill any gap in your army as you see fit. And, of course, in the troop slot in general, a massive reason to take troops is that they have objectives secured. This is also why I start out every army list I go out to write as a combined arms detachment, because objective secured, while it might only come up a couple of times in games or so, when it does come up, it is very important. It does affect outcomes, and you might surprise your opponent by having your objective secured transport remain to the end of the game. I've done that a couple of times and felt the receiving end of that. It's not exactly pleasant, especially if it's a drop pod. Stupid armor 12 all the way around in the transport. Anyway, so I start out with a CAD every army because of objective secured, and because it's a very well-balanced starting point in terms of what you can get. I'll bleed into my formations speech here a little bit too by saying formations, yes, you sometimes get incredible buffs, but you lose out on a lot of synergy in between other units. For example, bully boys, orc bully boys, which are 3 units of 5 meganobs, and they all get fearless. That's an incredible buff to those units. The only problem is it's really expensive to field, and if you just take a bunch of those guys, you're going to be, limiting what you can take to support them, as in transports and chaff units and fire support, which could end up being a very big problem depending on your point size and what kind of game type you're playing at. So I like to start with CADs just because they are simple. It's a good starting point. Everybody knows what a CAD is. Not everybody even has a Decurion, so it's not even fair sometimes. CADs are just decent, and they if you find that you have the units in your CAD to make a formation, go for it. That way you have slots left over in your CAD in case you need anything else. That's how I use my formations. That's how I justify paying for them. All right, guys. So just in review, I just went over HQs and troops in my list building series. In my next segment, I'm gonna go over elites, fast and heavy slots, and how their different roles affect your army, and not just in firepower. All right, guys. So I'm gonna end this here. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.